Hey, great. It's been a while, but we're back again with another episode of In with Peter Chulu. Today, I've got the lovely Belinda Lartey. Belinda, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Today, we'll be talking about COVID. Is it over? Is it not? What's the industry thinking? But for those of them that don't know you out there, Belle, could you introduce yourself, who you are, where you work in your position, and what we'll be discussing today?
So my name is Belinda. Most people call me Belle, and I'm a research director at Creative Medical Research. So we focus a lot on device and tech in healthcare and doing market research in that area. I've been working in healthcare market research for over 15 years, traditional pharma stuff, development stuff that's more social, in the global south, in the global north, as they call it, pretty much most places. So yeah, that's my very brief background. I also am a nutritional therapist, so it's interesting using that as well, and thinking from that angle when we're working in healthcare and talking to patients and those kind of things.
Great. Device and tech, right? So you UK based, but are you guys doing work internationally? Is some of the feedback
Yes.
today going to be international feedback? Okay, good.
Yeah. We work
Great.
internationally, very rarely just in the UK, actually.
The focus today, I really wanted to talk about, is COVID still affecting the research industry? Now, I'm saying still because obviously, we thought we were over the hump, then others were saying weren't, then we are. Then you have other things happening, other things not happening. So I just want to find out from somebody who's working in the UK for an international research company, what's your general take? Is it still affecting the research industry, in your opinion?
Yes and no. I think that in healthcare we were so busy, even in 2020, actually, just really, really busy, and in 2021 as well, just a lot of work going on because businesses were trying to think about how to adjust to this new way, and how that might affect how patients are thinking, how healthcare professionals are thinking. So we were pretty busy. And then last year we started to see indications of things slowing down, but it's not, I wouldn't say directly COVID, it's about the impact of COVID, possibly more longer term on the economy and other things on the economy. So it's the time we're living in impact, I think, now more than COVID. But for us in healthcare, it wasn't like working in automobiles, for example, where a lot of people saw, kind of a standstill, especially at the beginning. I think that, in March, everyone kind of froze. And then from about May or something, it just shot up in terms of workload. And now, there are different economic pressures going on and things to balance that are causing some challenges. But I wouldn't say it's directly COVID so much.
But Bill, the thing about it is that I was always thinking, are you busy because it's an overspill, or are you busy because that's the true reflection of what's happening based on COVID and the economy? Or would you say, actually, I think what we were facing is similar to what other companies are facing? And what's your take on that?
Okay, so I don't think it was an overspill. I think a few projects and so on were stopped, were frozen. Okay, and then companies, especially pharmaceutical companies and healthcare companies, had to take a restock and say, look, we need to find out what's happening now. We actually need to start researching health behaviors and how it's going to change, how it is changing, and keep up to date with that in the context of COVID. So I think it was quite a reaction to COVID as well, rather than just, oh, we had all this work before. Some of it was that, but some of it was, okay, let's add COVID questions in now. Let's do this. Do we need to put this in the COVID context? And not everything was COVID focused, but obviously couldn't ignore it. What does it mean now for, patients that have to go into hospital usually, but now can't? Now they're vulnerable, but can they be seen? What is the impact of that? What is it, the impact on healthcare professionals? What do they prioritize? And I think at the time I was doing a lot of work on even childhood vaccination. And when we started, COVID wasn't a thing. By the time we ended, everyone was talking about COVID. And, as a group and as a team, and even just talking to different people within the countries, nationally and internationally, there's a concern that there was such a focus on COVID vaccination that we were missing childhood vaccinations, right?
Did you notice any change in methodologies as of recent? Are you getting more face to face, more IDIs, more online? What are you feeling at the moment in terms of the industry?
You know, before COVID, I would say the default was to kind of do things in person. And I remember, I've been doing research for a while, so I remember when doing things more online and doing like online focus groups and online IDIs is kind of like, oh, look, we're so cutting edge. And then it became, look, if we need to do it, it's great, especially for like wider reach. You have a central location, it's great, but it's in certain places, not everybody can get there. Do we have the voices of everybody? Like even say, let's say in the UK, you have a lot of the main cities they're in. Do we get the voices of people from the other places? So the online methodology was great, but now it's become the default. And then we say, oh, actually, is this an opportunity for in-person interviews? Can we justify it? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have to make clients feel comfortable with it. Sometimes we have to make sure we're comfortable with it. Are we going to view? Are we going to do in person, but then view on streaming? Which then is like, does that really weigh up in terms of benefits? So, yeah.
Yeah. But what are you advising those clients that are choosing profit over insight? So for example, they're used to the online, it's cheaper. I'm not knocking it back, but maybe, now they have to do the same research and they're thinking, should we really spend an extra? What are you telling those clients?
It's not coming so strongly. I think that there are some costing considerations behind it, but it's not coming so strongly as costing. It's almost like a safety thing. And people are finding it really difficult to kind of come out of that safety shell of being online. Now they're like, what kind of risk assessments do we have to do? But when clients are willing, they love it. When clients, for them, sometimes it's an opportunity for them to all get together in the back room because they haven't had an opportunity. So they can use the market research to say, look, I'm going to see you in the back room, like in the old days of a central location. And for them, they can use that as a reason to do that. So for them, sometimes it's like, it's even still company policy in some places. And so that they're kind of fighting against that. But a lot of clients are saying, tell us what's best, what you recommend and when you're proposing, and then we'll see what makes sense. But I there's still this feeling of, online still feeling like a default. And then we're saying, okay, I think we can justify going for face-to-face for this one.
And your business model at Creative Medical Research, how has that changed because of COVID? Not necessarily for clients, but your actual internal staff and everything there. How has that been affected or changed?
So it's interesting because I only joined recently, and I joined recently as a kind of I guess a consequence of COVID. So I don't think George will mind me saying, our CEO, that before he thought he had to kind of recruit for people to come to the office. It's this traditional model, right? And then everyone had to work from home. And then he was like, wait a minute. They don't even need to be in this place. They don't need to be from this town. I can just recruit wider. And that just opened up his talent pool, just like that. Right?
Is that
just open up?
But Bill, is that a threat, do you think? I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a bit. Is that taking jobs away from people with it? Like, let's say England, right? Because I was in England for a long time, and you were in England to get a better life, a better job, but then now everything is sort of like opened up, right? Is that good or is that bad? Is that creating more jobs internally or abroad? What do you think?
I think it allows for greater flexibility and more options, right? It depends where you're based. But in some places, you've decided to open up, and there aren't that many market researchers. And then healthcare market researchers, there aren't that many. So then you're just like scrambling for people, or trying to work out whether you can recruit anybody. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I can go wider in the UK. That helps, right? So I think that it just allows a lot more options. But I think it takes leaders to continue to remain compassionate and think about what works for their business and also what works for their staff, and ultimately what works for your staff will often work for your business in that, to try and keep them happy and think about their well-being. I think that with the COVID thing, I know that it's trying to balance out people being in person and what you gain from that, with the fact that I've likened it to when you are wearing a shoe that's tight, right? And then you take off the shoe, and then you try to put the shoe back on, and the foot isn't.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of rhetoric, that's the kind of themes, that's how people are talking about. I used to go to the office 5 days a week. How did I do that? Plus pick up the kids, plus do the washing, plus go to the gym, plus, everything. They're just like, I don't know how I did it. And I think it is a moment of, or has become a moment of questioning and reckoning what actually makes sense. And people are actually looking more about the history of work. Why do we work 9 to 5? Who used to work 9 to 5? It used to be men who had someone else taking care of everything at home. Things aren't structured like that anymore, but we've kind of continued with that frame of working. Okay, so what changes can be made now to make it easier for everything? And if you think about it as well, in some ways, some companies benefited a lot because people just worked more from home. That's in terms of well-being, it's a challenge, but people just like, oh, well, I'm here, I might as well just do another hour of work. So, and then on the other hand, you have companies saying, probably go down to 4 days, and productivity is the same or goes up. So I think it started to challenge a lot of what we thought was just the way that we should work.
But also another thing I wanted to discuss with you, Bella, is because at the beginning you mentioned device and tech. That's the area that you guys are focusing in. If a client is looking for the online option, and let's say they're in the device and tech area, are these prototypes, do you have to feel and touch them? Or is it all of a sudden, because of COVID, you've now got these companies coming up with innovative ways of, I don't know, doing things that you used to do that needed physical touch and feel and testing? How is that working out for you?
It's a combination of things. Sometimes it's just a concept on paper. Sometimes it is things that need to be sent out to people in different locations. And sometimes we say, we need to do this face to face and send, we'll take them to this location. So that's one of the key reasons why we'll say this is a good face to face scenario, let's say, because we have things that they need to look at. But some things that are device and tech they don't always have access to it. It's about looking at the images of it and so on. So there's different types of research, but it's a very good question.
And lastly, I wanted to find out if let's say there's a client out there looking to invest in the next device, but they're not sure whether it's time yet, because they're thinking, am I going to get the right respondents, the right methodologies? Can I test this device out there? What would your advice be to the client? Should they be launching their research campaigns now, or should they still hang tight and see, what middle of 2023 is going to bring? Like, what's your advice?
It kind of depends what the device is. Always, context is key, but what are you waiting for? Why would you wait to find out information? Yeah. Now, everything is changing so quickly, to be fair, but I think getting a gauge of what people are willing to do, how that might have changed. There's always a place for doing the research and speaking to the people that might be your consumers or your customers or your advocates, or your naysayers, right? The people that won't agree with it, just to understand what that market is doing. And so it doesn't have to be, a massive piece of market research with absolutely everyone from 15 countries, but just getting a gauge on it will help you to make that decision, rather than me saying, don't launch it now, launch it now. You need to speak to the people that are on the ground. You speak to some, the people that are making financial decisions. You speak to people that might be in need of the product and what their concerns are, and other stakeholders that might be playing in the role. So I wouldn't be scared, because when is there ever a perfect time?
Great. No, Belle, thank you very much for joining us today, guys. That's Belle from Creative Medical Research, and I'm so glad that we managed to connect. I'm sure this is going to be the first of many. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Thank you. Enjoy your day as well.